Hello and welcome to episode 35 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria, your host, and you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as mmonska. The show notes for this week's episode can be found on the blog, which is stitchedinsweden.blogspot.com. And we have a Ravelry group, which can be found by searching Stitched in Sweden in the Groups tab on Ravelry. So welcome to another week. I am recording today on Friday, I guess November the 6th, I think. I had my exam this morning, and I think it went quite well. So I figured that I could pop in and say hello and get an episode recorded before the weekend while it is still light outside. I notice when I don't have adequate light that it's not really film. The recording is a bit more grainy, but I hope that the quality is still good enough that everything still comes across well. I've been playing a little bit with lighting, but so far any artificial lights that I have seem really harsh and yellow, kind of. So not sure what I'm going to do about that when it's really dark, but for now I will just, see how it goes. So this week I will talk to you, give you a little review of the week, and tell you about some works in progress, one finished object, well, two, some upcoming projects, which includes some stash enhancement, some question and answer, and I guess a little technique tip. So I wanted to say a really big thank you to those of you who have already gotten in touch with me about donating knitted items to refugees here in Sweden. And some of you have pointed out that there are refugees, obviously, in other parts of Europe and the world. And if you live somewhere else and live close by to some places where people might be in need of warm things, then maybe you could consider donating some newly knitted items or gently used hand-knitted items to those people as well, instead of sending them to Sweden. But we definitely appreciate your donations here, and so I just wanted to say thank you for those of you who have been in touch with me. I haven't posted the address of where to send them because it is Vanessa's address, who's the person doing this sort of collaboration with me, but if you send me a private message on Ravelry, then I will happily give you that information. So I also just wanted to say thank you to everyone who is coming back as a returning watcher and new viewers as well. And also to all the podcasters who have mentioned my show at some point. It's really nice. It's really nice to be watching a show and then have somebody say something nice about you and or your patterns or something. And I don't always, I never actually really say specific people who have mentioned my patterns or something, but it's always really exciting to see people knitting them, and I really appreciate the nice things that you say about me and my patterns and my podcasts on your shows as well. I don't claim to watch all of the knitting podcasts that ever existed, so I guess I just feel more comfortable not picking out certain people necessarily who have mentioned me. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyway, it's not that I'm not appreciative, because I definitely am. And I guess now that I've said that, I will say that in the last week the last couple weeks, it has been really cool to see Isabel of Fluffy Fibers and Jenny from Tiny Paper Foxes wearing their lattice shawls, and they both knitted with similar colors, beautiful sort of turquoisey bluish colors with Isabel used a cream border and Jenny used kind of more of a gray, and I think their color combination was a really nice choice. I will get started now with some things that I'm working on. This week I did work on my Wheaten wrap. The Wheaten wrap is by Annie Hansen, and it looks pretty much like a big red blob. The filming it is really grainy. Oh, it's not even really winter yet. If anybody has any suggestions for what kind of light that they use for artificial light for podcasts, I always just sit right in front of my window, which is where I get my light from, but it's really overcast and just not light out anymore. So if you have any suggestions, that would be really appreciated. I've been working on this big red blob of a wrap, which is going well. Again, it's a darker color in real life, but this is how much I have left of the third ball. So it's going, and I have 2 more skeins, so this will be a 5 skein shawl in the end. It's not a shawl, it's a wrap. It's just going to be a big, long, rectangular piece. And I guess I would say probably at about the halfway point, because I'm probably a little bit more than halfway through the 3rd out of 5 balls. So, I am enjoying knitting on that when I sort of want to think about another project that I want to work on and don't necessarily have something directly ready to start, or something that might need some more thinking about, or just looking at the directions, and if I just want to knit in the evening or something, I can pick that up and not have to consult the directions so much, because it's really the same thing over and over. A similar project to that is the quill, which is a big wrap sort of blanket shawl that is by Jared Flood, and the original is a square, and I'm doing mine as a triangular shawl. And right now I do not have the needles on the tips of my cord, so I'm living quite dangerously here, I would say, because I almost just lost all the stitches, but it basically hasn't changed that much since the last time you saw it. It's a very light gray. I guess it has gotten a little bit bigger, but not a whole lot. This is just some really nice garter stitch that I can work on while doing other things like reading, and it will definitely be a long-term project, but it's not something that I'm really like rushing to finish anyway. But that is the quill pattern by Jared Flood, and I'm knitting it in lace. What is it called? Oh, I thought I had the tag over here. Not so prepared today. But that's how it is sometimes. I am knitting it in a lace weight yarn from the Wool Barn, and it is the silver color. It has a little bit of stellina in there, and I believe that it's merino, silk, and cashmere, possibly. It's lovely to work with, and it's one of the first times, I think it's the second time ever that I have knit with sparkly yarn, and I think that especially for, I don't know, for winter it's nice because it adds a little sparkle, which kind of, I don't know why snowflakes, it reminds me of snowflakes even though snowflakes aren't really sparkly, but I guess sometimes they are when the light hits them. That's what it reminds me of, anyway. Another project that I worked on this week is the Suniva socks. And this is a pattern by Liana from A Wee Bit Knitty. And I finished the first sock. Last time I think I was just knitting on the cuff. But here is the first sock, and it looks quite strange, I think, when it doesn't have a foot and a leg in it, but it fits perfectly. And let me just stick my hand in it to give you a little bit better of an idea. Hopefully it's not hitting my microphone. Okay. Well, that heel looks funny. I don't have sock blockers still. But here is the pattern. It was really nice, simple sort of cable-ish thing to do, and it just added a little bit of interest to the sock. I really like how they fit because I prefer my socks to be quite snug, and sometimes stockinette socks slide down, but I don't really want to, I get too bored with knitting just ribbed socks, which I think would be ideal. But these ones are even better because they do create sort of a ribbing because there's purl stitches in between the knit stitches, so it's basically ribbing all the way down, but you're doing something else, which makes it more interesting than just plain ribbing. But yeah, I really like how this turned out. This is the first time, I think, ever, maybe, that I've had any patterning on the heel flap. So the patterning from the cuff continues down onto the heel flap. And these socks used a different rate of decrease, I guess, for the gusset than I usually do on my socks, and it fits me really well. So I wonder if perhaps I have a high instep. I don't know if this is maybe better for people with a higher instep, that you decrease more gradually, because if it is, then I would guess that I have a high instep. I'm not really sure. But these fit really nice, and I think that I would even consider knitting plain stockinette socks, or any socks really, with this decreasing method, just because it really does fit my feet really nicely. So, but you can see how stretchy they are, and they bounce back into a tight form, and looks kind of funny, but yeah, I like them. And I knit these in the Wool Barn, in the smooth sock, in the Old Romance colorway, I believe. And I have started the second one as well. And just have the top part of that one. I do get second sock syndrome sometimes, and I was actually just watching Kristen's podcast, Yarngasm, and she was saying how she wants to knit socks with patterning on them like me, but she also really likes knitting stockinette socks, and she gets more second sock syndrome when she has a patterned sock, and I do too. I don't know why you have the idea that I knit a lot of patterned socks, really, because I don't think that I do, but one of the ways that I try to avoid getting second sock syndrome, I guess, is that I don't finish the toe of the first sock until I know that I have enough time to start, like I have a block of time period to have enough time to start the second sock. So I knit basically all the way till I was doing most of the toe decreases, and then I stopped and knitted on something else because I knew I only had maybe 10 minutes left of knitting time for that day, and I waited till the next day when I knew that I would have more of a block of time where I could finish the toe of that one and start the ribbing of this one, so that I never had a period where this one was finished and the other one wasn't started. Because I think that it just really helps me anyway stay motivated to knit the second sock. Also because I'm really excited to wear these socks. They fit really well. I love the yarn, and I have a new pair of boots, winter boots, that are wool lined, and they're lovely. And they will be, I think, really nice to wear with some hand knitted socks. So that's another bit of motivation, I guess, to finish them. And I'm also working on another sock, which I showed you last week too. This is just a pair of striped socks, and here is the first one. I finished this sock sometime during the week, and again, same thing. I made sure that I had enough time to start the second sock. Here is the second sock that is started, and I have a little bit more of the cuff to do, or the leg, I guess, to do before I do the heel. And these socks are just a lot of fun. It's not, I don't very often make my own striped socks. I don't knit striped socks very often in general, but when I do knit striped socks, it's usually with self-striping yarn. But this was a lot of fun just to use the yarn that I had and knit up some socks with stripes. It's really easy to do. I had a couple of questions about how I carried the yarn, so I thought I would show you now that I have this sock off the needles and you can see the inside of the sock. It'll be a little bit easier to explain. So here's the inside, and here is the back of the leg where I carried the yarn, and I carried the yarn on the bottom of the sock. And basically what you do, or what I did, was I used the jogless join, and I followed a tutorial that's a free tutorial on craftsy.com, and it's really easy to do. Don't even think twice about it, just check out that tutorial and give it a try. When I got to I did 3 rows of white and 3 rows of black, and when I got to the color change, I would just wrap the yarn around each other, like twist the yarn in the back, which I think helped close up the hole that's created a little bit when you have stripes. And that's it. I cannot feel this seam at all. It's hardly really a seam. I don't feel it in the bottom of my foot or anything, and I think they'll be fun to wear. So I'm also looking forward to those, and I haven't blocked this one yet or anything. I'll do it together with the other sock once I finish it. But I decided to just go with the black heel and toe for this one, mostly just because, I don't know, there's no reason. I just like them. But yeah. So I've been kind of switching back and forth between those 2 sock projects, and sometimes I want a project with a little bit of interest with the cables, and then sometimes I just want to knit straight, and then I maybe switch to the striped one. The last project that I've been working on this week is the Kennybeck Cowl, which is a pattern in Wool People 5, and it's by Dawn Catanzaro. This is a pattern that I mentioned a few weeks back, and I said that I was going to I was looking for a pattern to knit for Thomas with the yarn that he picked out. This is a Wool Barn heavy episode because I also have these 2 skeins of the Wool Barn. It was like so shiny. It is the Smooth Sock base, and this is the metal colorway, so I guess it's fitting that it's quite shiny. And this is a 50% merino, 50% silk base, I believe. So I have been looking for a pattern for a while, and I shouldn't have asked Thomas what he wanted, because that just left open space for him to have an opinion about what he wanted, and I know that really he would like anything that I knit for him. But then once I asked him what he wanted, and I showed him some options on Ravelry, he became very picky in deciding what he did and didn't like about each of the patterns. So in the end, I think that he saw some other people on the train or something wearing cowls with just, you know, some interesting texture or something before he felt like he wanted to have some really complicated patterning. But then he noticed that the simple texture did look really nice. So he decided that the Kennebec cowl would be a good option. If you haven't seen this pattern before, it's basically just a brioche cowl. And I've just started, as you can see, but it's knit in a big loop. The loop is, you know, I think the dimensions are on the Ravelry page, so I can tell you it's like 58 inches in circumference, and then there's 2 options for depth. And I will be trying to knit the deeper size, but I'll just keep knitting basically until I run out of yarn. The pattern begins with a tubular cast on, and it's very well detailed in the pattern how exactly you should do it, and then it transitions into the brioche. You can see here that you can definitely tell where the cast on is compared to the brioche because there's quite a big difference in the gauge, and I don't really know how I feel about that exactly. It doesn't bother me so much, but I don't think that it's that nice. I don't really know how I would do it differently, but I hope that the edging is stretchy enough for the cowl because brioche is quite a stretchy stitch, and I'm just hoping that it doesn't restrict it too much in a way that makes the cowl behave strangely when it's being wrapped. Thomas wanted a cowl that could be wrapped around twice, so I know that this looks pretty small. These are on my 32-inch needles, but you know, if this is how it is bunched up, brioche really stretches a lot. So I have the feeling that this will grow quite a lot after it's not restricted by the needle circumference. But yeah, I'm not really sure. There's been some other notes in this project, in the patterns from this project, that say that the cast off and the bind off were too tight, and I'm just hoping that that doesn't happen, or that I just don't, yeah. I mean, they're obviously tighter than the brioche, but I hope that it isn't so tight that it restricts the cowl and makes it look funny. It's nice maybe to have some structure from the bind off and cast on, bind on. But yeah, I don't know, we will see. But for those of you who are interested, and maybe don't know what brioche is, because I know not all of you do, this is what it looks like, and it looks sort of like a ribbing. So you get those like purl one, knit one bumps. I don't know if you can tell. Like, yeah, you get kind of like these ridges. But the fabric is really much thicker and much squishier than normal knitted fabric. Because, yeah, it just has like some dimension to it, I guess. And it just gives a really, a nice squishy, lofty sort of fabric in the end. And I actually had a question from Tia and Kat, and she wondered how and when I learned brioche and how long it took me to master the technique, and if I had any tips for someone who wanted to give it a try. And really, I learned it basically a year ago, I guess, when I first swatched for my Oshima pullover, which is the pattern by Jared Flood that I finished recently, that is the big cowl neck sweater that has brioche in the cowl and on the chest. And so I really wanted to knit that sweater, and I didn't know how to do brioche. I downloaded the pattern and just knit a swatch, and that's how I learned how to do it. The instructions were really clear, and that was just a good way to start. I think a cowl like this could be a good way to start too, because it's basically brioche over and over and over. But there's nothing really scary about brioche. It's not that complicated. It's definitely not any more complicated than lace or anything. It's basically just a combination of yarn overs and knitting. It's yarn overs with knit stitches and yarn overs with purl stitches that then you then knit together with the stitch that's kind of underneath it. I know that's kind of a complicated sounding thing, but it's really simple. And I think that just knitting a swatch would be an adequate way to just practice out the technique. And then you should just go and try a pattern. Yeah. I usually watch a couple of YouTube videos just by searching the technique that I'm interested in learning, just to get a feeling for some ways of doing it, and then I think you're probably good to go. So yes, that is the Kennebec cowl, and I will be knitting that this weekend probably, and trying to get it knit up pretty quickly so that Thomas can have it and wear it, because he has been leaving the house in the morning with a rather sad look on his face, like, it's getting cold, but my neck is not covered, and it would be really nice to have a cowl. So yeah, I will try to get that finished for him soon. I have been working a little bit on my honeycomb blanket, which is the hexagon scrap blanket that I started a while ago. But I can only do a couple of hexagons at a time before my wrist starts to hurt, or before I know that my wrist will hurt the next day. And I pulled this out this week while I was studying, mostly because mini skeins were distracting me, and I just wanted to knit something, and I wanted something that I could finish quickly, so that I could say, okay, I can knit one hexagon and then I have to keep studying, rather than working on a project and then getting sucked into it. So in that sense it's good, but I think this week especially, a combination of writing a lot with like pen and paper for my studying, and doing a little bit of this crochet really aggravated my wrist, and then I was kind of like not really enjoying other projects because I could feel that my wrist was irritated. So that was kind of unfortunate, but I did do just a couple of hexagons, and I thought I would show you because I haven't showed you in a while. So I keep my project in this box, which is a little sort of transparent-ish box, I think, that maybe it came from IKEA. And I keep it, usually I just keep the mini skeins in there, and I have the directions written out for the pattern, which is a free pattern on Ravelry. It's called the Hexagon How-To. It's by Attic24, and it links to a blog that basically shows you how to make these hexagons, and it also shows you how to do the connect as you go if you're interested in that, which I am interested in and do. So I just have this box, which has some of my mini skeins in there. You can't see so well, but yeah, that's how it is. And I'm glad that I had written out the instructions, because I forgot how to do it since the last time that I worked on it, and it was nice to have it there. I'm using a 2.75 millimeter crochet hook, and this is by Knit Pro, I think. It's, I think, a size C in the US, I'm not sure. And I use the Lana Grossa wool for the border. It's just like this one. And it's color 1113, which is cream. And then I have mini skeins for the middle parts. So this was the main blanket part that I had from the beginning. And I haven't added anything to that yet, or since the last time I saw you, since the last time I showed you. And this is the other little part that I have started. And this part is all hexagons from, or all mini skeins from Olivia of This Handmade Life. And I wanted to put the ones that she had sent me all together because they just really looked so nice together, I thought. And so I wanted to have them together in the blanket. So I think that this week I added these two to this little section, and I also I have some that are made but just don't have the white part attached to them yet. And I also did this one, which is from a little mini skein from Caroline, which is from the Zazu Knits or Zazu podcast. And yeah, so I just did a couple more of these. Some of these I had already done and just haven't put them in yet. But it's really fun to work with little bits of new yarn, and I just wish that it didn't hurt my wrist. So now the sun is coming out all of a sudden, so that maybe helps the lighting situation slightly, but not much. Anyway, this project usually just sits up on my desk shelf, and I really just want the blanket, actually. In general, I think that I'm a process and product knitter because I enjoy the process and enjoy trying new techniques and really getting into the actual knitting of it, but I also enjoy wearing my knitted things. But for this blanket, I really just want the finished blanket. I think it will be really nice and have a nice weight to it, and it will be a nice blanket to have on the couch. And I'm not so much enjoying the process anymore just because it is a little bit painful. Not really painful, but it's slow going because I do have to just do one here or there. Anyway, so lots of stuff that I was working on this week, actually. But I guess, yeah, I don't usually have that many works in progress, but this week it kind of just felt like, I don't know, I was just kind of scattered with studying for my exam and stuff too. But anyway, I did finish one project, and these are the blueberry waffle socks, which is a free pattern on Ravelry, and these are done. So these will be a gift for someone, and they turned out really nice and squishy, and I think that they will serve their perfect purpose well. But yeah. So that is the finished project for this week, but I didn't block those yet. So let's see. Oh yes. So for another question and answer, I already sort of answered the question about brioche from Tia and Kat. The other question was from Purple Needle, and she asked if I had a go-to pattern that I find myself going back to again and again and knitting multiple times, or if I always just find a new pattern to knit. And the truth is that I almost always find a new pattern. There are so many projects or so many patterns that I want to knit, and there's, of course, always more coming out, that I usually get sucked into looking on Ravelry and, just finding new patterns. But one pattern, I guess you could say, that I go back to is the first ever pattern that I used for knitting socks. It's kind of like the way that I knit socks or whatever, which is in the book called Getting Started Knitting Socks by Anne Budd. And that's the first knitting book that I owned, and because I wanted to learn how to knit, and I wanted to knit socks, and I didn't want to knit anything else. So I picked up that book and I started knitting socks. So since then I've sort of modified a little bit, I guess, but basically I do a top-down sock, oftentimes with a gusset, heel flap and gusset, and then a heel turn, and I decrease every other row for the gusset, and then do a sort of rounded toe. And that was kind of just, it's really standard, a really standard sock. But in that pattern book, I guess I just used that pattern book and I followed the instructions exactly because I didn't know how to do anything else. And I think that because it was sort of the first way that I knit socks, I often go back to that. And now I sort of have it memorized, but so it's not really a particular pattern that I go back to. And now I'm kind of questioning it because, like I said before, the rate of gusset decrease in the Geneva socks that I'm knitting is different than what kind of like I consider my traditional socks, and I think it fits better, so I may be changing that also. But yeah, otherwise I almost always find a new pattern, and I haven't knit so many patterns more than once. There was a phase where I knit a couple of swallowtail shawls, but I modified that pattern once where I knit 2 of them so that they had a normal stockinette stitch body part and then just the edging, the lace edging. But yeah, otherwise mostly new patterns. Yeah. Okay, so upcoming projects. I am hoping to be working on the Kennebec cowl a lot today and this weekend so that I can get that to Thomas soon. But I did get some new yarn in the mail this week, which I plan on casting on soon. And I'm really excited for this project. There's a couple reasons I'm excited for it. First of all, because it's in one of my favorite yarns, and that's always nice. Second of all, because it will include a technique which I have never tried and I would like to try. And it is I didn't really set goals, like knitting goals, for this year, except I did. One of them was to do a project that involved steeking. So that this upcoming project is a steeked project, so I'll tell you about that in a second. And my other knitting goal was to publish 12 patterns in 2015. And so far I have 11, and there is one more coming out before the end of the year, so that's really exciting. So yes, those were my 2 goals for this year, I guess, and also starting the podcast, but I didn't really think about that much. I just sort of started it one day. Okay, anyway, back to my upcoming project. So, this week in the mail, I ordered 7 skeins of Brooklyn Tweed Loft in all different colors. 2 of them are the same color. Oops. But here they are. And I am really excited about this color palette. Yeah. What can I say? I will go through and show you them individually, but basically I have my eye on, I would really like a pullover with stranded colorwork, stripes, like striped segments of colorwork, so not just stripes, but stripes with color work within them. Striped with, why is this so complicated? I'm going to have like basically a solid background color with horizontal segments or stripes of color work within those color work stripes. Why is that complicated? I don't know. So far I am looking at the pattern called Ashland, which is a pattern by Julie Hoover, and it's in the most recent Wool People or Brooklyn Tweed. I don't know. Sort of the same thing, right? And the armholes are steeked, I believe, in that pattern. It does involve steeking. Usually, patterns are steeked down the middle to turn a pullover into a cardigan, or often they are, but a lot of times also armholes are steeked. So for those of you who don't know what steeking is, just in case, because, for example, my dad watches the podcast, and I know he probably doesn't know, or maybe he does. Steeking is when you have knitting in the round, which is most often colorwork knitting, because it's easier to do colorwork in the round than doing it flat. So it's when you have any piece of knitting in the round that you want to then turn into flat. So, for example, if you knit a tube of a sweater and then you actually want it to be a cardigan, you could cut down the middle and add a button band and then turn it into a cardigan. You can do the same things with armholes so that you cut open the armhole and then knit the sleeve out from there. There's other places you can steek too. You could steek a V-neck, different things like that. I've never tried it. Not because that I'm necessarily scared of cutting the knitting, which is a little bit scary, but I don't think that's the reason I haven't tried it. I think that the main reason is that I just have never done a large-scale colorwork project that required steeking. So yeah, this will be it. And I have not set on the Ashland pullover, but it's the style that I'm looking for. I find that I used to knit a lot of cardigans, but actually I prefer to wear knitted pullovers. So that's kind of a good thing to learn. Not that I'll never knit a cardigan again, I definitely will, but I've really been enjoying wearing knitted pullovers, so that's what I want to do. But the armholes will be steeked, like I said. So I think that at least the Ashland pullover will provide a good template in a way for a starting point of the sweater. I have knit yoked pullovers before in colorwork, so you have like this section here, the yoke, which is the colorwork, and then maybe it's worked top down, and then you take the sleeves off and then keep going. But I am more interested in having a pullover that has sort of this more set-in sleeve look to it instead of the yoked pullover. So that's why I'm sort of leaning towards this pattern. But I am considering incorporating a little bit more color work than the Ashland has. Whatever. The point is that I have picked out, also because the Ashland only has 3 colors, including the background color, and I have 5 plus the background color. So it'll definitely be a little bit different. So I have 2 skeins of Fossil, and I have another project which I have a partial skein left over, and then I have the project which I'm not so happy with, so I might rip it out. So I technically have 3 skeins of Fossil. And this is a nice oatmeal color, which will provide sort of like the background for the sweater. And then I have these 4 colors, which will be the main, I'm planning on having these 4 colors be the main colors of the sweater, which are and then having this color be kind of an occasional accent. So starting with this one, this is Postcard, and it's a nice grayed purple with little, I mean, it's tweed, so there's little flecks of red in there too. Really like that color. And then there is Blanket Fort, which is a nice purple, also kind of grayed out a little bit. That's it next to Postcard. Then there is Sap, which is actually a really, more of a green color than this. Let me see if I hold my, this is yellow. So maybe you can tell that it's really bright springy green. This color. And then there is Camper, which is this nice sort of salmony pink that's heathered. Oh, I guess it's tweed. And then finally, there is Truffle Hunt, and I really like this color. I am not a brown person. I really don't like brown. Like, there's just no way around it. I don't like brown. And this is the only color brown that I'm okay with, because it's not really brown. It has like warm-ish brown colors in it, but really I think it reads more of a dark grayish blue with like a warm dark grayish blue. But I think it's really pretty, and I think it goes quite well with these other colors, so that is why I'm excited for it, definitely. But yeah, so those are my new yarns, and I'm excited to see how that project goes. I think maybe one thing that I'm worried about with steeking is that I have to knit a swatch and steek it. So when you knit a swatch regularly, I guess there's no reason to be worried about it, because you can see right over there I have a lot of my swatches hanging. I've never actually had to rip out my swatch to get that last little bit of yarn to finish a project. I almost always have yarn left over, so I'm not sure why I'm worried about it, but I guess because once you cut the yarn, you can't rip it out and use it, obviously. So there's no possibility of getting the yarn back from that swatch, but it's also a good opportunity to test out steeking before you knit an entire sweater and then cut it. So I think I should probably just get over that and get on with it and swatch, because I think it's going to be a really fun sweater to knit. So I think that is it for this week. Thank you again for watching, and thank you to those of you who have started gathering or knitting for your donations. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a nice week ahead and that you have lots of time for knitting. So until next time, happy knitting. Bye!